Well, here I am again, Davey Woods State Nature Preserve. Whenever I want to get away to some old growth forest not too far from home, this is where I head. So let's see what's happening here in late May 2026. Let's go. We've had some torrential rainstorms in a past week, so the woods are really damp, trails kind of muddy, but it's a nice clear day today. That's one of the reasons why I got out here. And this kind of weather, this time of year, late May, causes fungi to explode. So I'm seeing a lot of different stuff. I don't know them all, but I know some. And here's a neat one. And this one's, on first glance, you're not quite sure what it is, but in reality, it's a fungus called witch's butter. And that's this stuff. It's a very soft, apparently edible fungus, squishy, and I've seen it get very yellowish. This one's very whitish. I think some people call this snow jelly, something like that. Witch's butter, I think, is the more common term in Ohio. This one's, though, very whitish, and I think as it ages, it will get more yellowish. And that's thriving on a downed, what do we have here? I think it's a downed ash tree killed by emerald ash borer, which are common in this woods. So let's see what other kind of fungi and other fun things we can see. Spice bush is a very common understory shrub, a native shrub that we like. And I'm noticing on my walk so far, something's really gotten to these spice bushes this spring, causing a lot of this tattered appearance to the older leaves, kind of warped. Looks like it could have been maybe viral. I don't see any insects or anything like that, but they're very misshapen and they look like they've been fed on, but I can't see any insects on them at the moment. Now the new leaves that the spice bush has been putting out are fine, good looking, but something certainly got to these things a few weeks ago, and I don't know what that is right at the moment. So if I figure that out, I'll add a text caption, let you know. In front of me here is a nice woodland grass. We don't talk about grasses that much from the woods, but this is a nice one that's pretty abundant in Ohio woodlands. It's called bottlebrush grass. And here it is just emerging, the flower head. And it forms, this will expand further, and at its maximum, it'll look pretty much like a bottle brush that you use to clean bottles. And so this is a nice woodland understory grass. You can grow it in your yard. I have it in my own yard to kind of add a grass component of your native forest understory. If that's something you're trying to achieve in a backyard setting, you can do it with that species. There's abundant state trees, Ohio buckeyes in this woods, okay, with their palmately compound leaves, very abundant throughout this walk. I have been noticing some small ash trees still alive, and we'll get to some special ash trees here shortly, but even some small white ash trees I've noticed that are alive here, which is surprising. This area was devastated by emerald ash borer, as most areas. Here's a dead ash tree right here that just fell down recently. But I am noticing a few live trees. So I'll try to point those out when I see them next. Onward. I really like secluded, wild, natural areas. This is a nice one, but it's not very large. So there's actually a street on the borders both sides of the preserve, and this is the closest you get to it here. It's only about maybe 75 yards over there. And also in the background, we're surrounded by farmland and such, and I'm hearing gunshots, so that's fine. I just, something you have to tolerate when you're here, even though you're in a really nice wild spot. So I pulled out the camera at this spot because this is sort of a little gallery of giant tulip trees, which Davey Woods is known for, as well as oaks. There's a white oak just down slope there that we'll pass not too far from. But here's just a nice array of giant tulip trees. These are all, I've measured them in the past, they're all 40 to 48 inches in diameter in this particular spot. This one is showing smooth patch disease here at the base. Again, that fungus that feeds on the outer bark. Not pathogenic, but it leaves smooth areas of inner bark left. And so this is a really nice spot. And of course, Davey Woods is also known for giant sugar maples, giant walnuts, lots of different species. It's part of the old growth forest network. And to celebrate these kinds of trees, this is a roughly 4 foot diameter tulip tree. Just a massive, and here the trail gets you right up next to it. There you go. The biggest that I've seen is a little off the trail, so you have to view it from somewhat of a distance, except for scientific study. There's a few more giants across the way. Here's a northern red oak in front of us. Lots of white oaks here, black oaks, and hickories as well, if I haven't mentioned those. So let's keep going. The oak tree I pointed out from above is here now, above me. And I thought initially this was a white oak. It's actually not just your average white oak. Its leaves are so far up there, and I have no binoculars with me, that I'm not quite sure what it is. It's either a bur oak or a chinkapin oak or possibly a swamp white oak. I don't know. One thing I'm seeing, however, is its upper canopy is looking a little weak, which is a little concerning. So I don't know what's going on there, because that's the monster. That's one of the bigger in that white oak group in Davey Woods. It's probably close to 4 feet in diameter. So whatever is afflicting it, I hope it doesn't kill it. We're kind of having a disaster on our hands with oaks and things like oak wilt and various diseases, other diseases that attack them. And so let's hope that doesn't hit this place hard. In front of me, I'm noticing a fenced off area, likely to study deer impacts would be my guess. This is relatively new, almost brand new, and it's enclosing an area here that's probably about, I don't know, 10 by 50 meters, probably. And I don't know if this is part of a study or what's going on here, but it does kind of look like a study of regeneration and the impacts of deer. So I'll see if I can find out more about this as well, and who's running it. More about smooth patch disease, since I kind of had a debate with people online about this. People posting pictures of big trees, I follow some groups like that, are suggesting this sort of bark sloughing that you see with smooth patch disease is just like natural balding, like a guy would, show when you reach my age, as a sign of age. But that's not true. Whenever you see these bare patches on trees, oaks, tulip trees, ashes when they existed, sugar maples, it's almost always smooth patch disease, a fungal infection of the outer bark. Because if that wasn't there, this tree would have that kind of furrowed bark the whole way down to the ground. And you can see that on neighboring trees. I'll show you one right over here that doesn't really show smooth patch disease. They have that furrowed bark the whole way down to the bottom. So no, this isn't some human analogy of balding with old age. It's a disease that causes this look. So let's just hopefully prove myself right by looking at another. I'm also wading through stinging nettle. So I forgot what was going on earlier. I thought I was being bitten by something, but indeed it's stinging nettle. So here's a tulip tree just to show you that when it's not afflicted by smooth patch disease, actually this one is too, but you can see that it's that furrowed bark extends way down to the base essentially, but this one is showing some of it right there. So it's not balding, it's a disease. There are lots of nice hickories in this woods. Behind me is one of several species, including shagbark, pignut, and this one is bitternut hickory. This one is a pretty easy giveaway simply because of how narrow and fine its furrows are on its bark. It also makes very finely divided compound leaves, which are very far up there. You're not going to see them at all on this camera. But that is bitternut hickory. It makes a small round nut with very noticeable ridges on the husk. So that's bitternut hickory, named because it's very bitter to eat. Obviously other hickories you can eat, like shagbark. And of course pecans are just a type of hickory. Straight in front of me, a little bit too far for me to wade through the stinging nettle, is a very large blue ash. And it is in good health. We're not going to be able to see the canopy of that very well either, but maybe through here we can see it as the barrage continues at the target range. There's some dieback on some lower inner branches, but that's very common with blue ash. This is one I always point out as surviving in the face of emerald ash borer, while all the white and green ashes here have largely died. And there's a big one, you know, that's 2 feet in diameter. That's easily a 100-year-old tree, hanging in there quite well in this, what we would call an EAB aftermath forest. How long they will do so, we don't know. There are lots of seedlings of that. The beetle is still around at low density, but they haven't sort of overwhelmed blue ash yet, even though their main hosts are gone. So we'll see what the fate is. This is something we've studied too in the past, so I keep a close eye on that kind of thing. I always have to visit the monarch of Davey Woods, as I call it. This is the biggest tree in the woods, as far as I know. It's a 53-inch diameter tulip tree, perched up the top of a little ravine, just a little off the trail. This is all for science. And here it is. Really beautiful root flare. And just a towering specimen. Just a really straight bowl. Incredible volume of lumber in that. Unfortunately, tulip trees mostly get made into pallets. That's one good reason to build out of pallets, because they actually are made of decent, good wood. One thing I've noticed this time in, I'm not sure if I pointed this out before, but the monarch was struck by lightning at some point. It has a stripe running, it's the whole length of this bowl. Probably lose it through the foliage there. But it's been healed over pretty well. This tree is not hollow in the least that I can tell. Some trees, you know, this tree survived that. And lots of trees will survive a lightning strike, but that wound provides access to pathogens and fungi that cause heart rot and things like that. But this tree has not seemed to have suffered from it, and that's been quite some time. That's well healed over. And there's no sign of stress with this tree, which is good because this is an icon in my book. After emerging from the lowland along the stream to this upland, kind of not too far away from where the monarch is, you really see a difference in the forest understory. It's a lot more barren, and you can just sort of see that when you look around here. There's not as huge abundant patches of spice bush or young Ohio buckeyes or young ash trees and things like that. Much more barren. That's very much because of the shading. One, there are large trees here, okay, large oaks occupying the upper canopy. There's nice beech, but we have a lot of these. This is sugar maple, not only big ones, but young ones that are occupying the sort of the mid canopy. Like here's a very young one, but lots of smaller stems. And sugar maples have large leaves. They make a very dense canopy, and they're heavily shading. So underneath a sugar maple stand, it can be quite barren, and that's largely because of shade. And that's basically what we're seeing here. Here's sugar maple right here. you know, all these areas. And then as we emerge to this spot, you can just see the difference when the canopy opens up for one reason or another. So in this spot was a tree fall. I think several trees fell, including dead ash trees, where we've got light now. You can, I'm sure, literally see this getting brighter on camera. And the understory is much more dense again, filled with spice bush in this spot. Okay, they're young ash seedlings that are still hanging on. Not much in the way of invasives, which is nice, because invasives will often take advantage of this kind of situation. I know as a nature preserve, they work to control things like honeysuckle and such, but I think there's just not that much of it up here in this part of the woods, but it's much more dense understory where there's more light. Simple as that. I mentioned near the start today that there are some larger white ashes still alive here, and let's take a look at this. Now, the fate of most white and green ashes is what you see here on the ground. Okay, dead, killed by emerald ash borer. And I also know, here we'll take a look at their feeding gallery damage. I also know that there was a program to treat a handful of white ashes in this forest at one point. And this tree right here is actually still alive. And it's a white ash. Now, the canopy you see right here is sugar maple. I had to go way down the trail to really see the top of this tree. But it is alive. There's some dying branches or dead branches, but it's pretty robust. And I don't know if this is one that might have gotten treatment, that just got it through a critical period and kind of escaped heavy attack, or that it just was one of the lucky ones. It got missed, or it's a lingering ash that's actually showing some degree of resistance to the beetle. In fact, here is some leaves from it. Okay, classic white ash. Very cool. So this one is hanging in there. I will definitely be keeping my eye on it. About 1.5 feet in diameter, so a decent sized tree. And there's one back there I think might actually be alive as well. I'll investigate that off camera. But, you know, it seems unlikely that that thing will last for that much longer in that state, but we'll see. I'll keep an eye on it. This historic sign describes the landowners back in the 1800s who originally had this plot of land, and they operated a sawmill here. So what that basically means for the trees and the woods we've been seeing today is you could bet that a lot of this woods was cut over at some point, okay? The very large tulip trees we're seeing, because they're a fast-growing tree, might very well have grown back since the 1850, when the sawmill ran till 1846. Because they could reach the sizes we're seeing today in 150 years. Maybe some were older than that, but many of those tulip trees were probably between 100 and 150 years old. Now, the oak trees we saw, however, have to be older than that. Somehow they in my estimation, are the big ones are 200 to 300 years old or so, and they would have had to not have been cut for some reason. So they were spared at that time. Of course, that was a long time ago. They might have been a relatively small tree and not targeted, but because there was a sawmill operated on the creek right down in the ravine here, you can bet that a lot of this was cut over at that time. And so what you see has regrown because it's remained protected throughout most of that recovery period. So that gives us large trees. Many areas in Pennsylvania and Ohio have been cut over 2 and 3 times since, they were first cut over. So just a little bit about the history of this plot. Well, that'll conclude my short walk around Davey Woods. Not anything too spectacular today, other than the spectacularity that exists here all the time. Till next time, this is Don signing off. Bye-bye.